Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and spending your evening with us today. So today's presentation, we're going to go over how to build a satellite, the NEUDOSE project overview. My name is Connor. I'm the payload or one of the payload team leads, and I'll be talking a little bit about the presentation, one of the many presenters that we have here. So just a little bit about what NEUDOSE is. So NEUDOSE stands for Neutron Dosimetry and Exploration. Neutron dosimetry, meaning neutron radiation detection, and then exploration. So we are a team of over 60 students and researchers, and that's students at multiple different levels. So we have undergraduate students, graduate students, PhD students, the whole 9 yards. And we're part of the Canadian Space Agency's Canadian CubeSat project, abbreviated CCP. So in this project, universities all around Canada are selected to design and build CubeSat satellites. And you get to participate in a real space mission. So students like us are able to participate. It's a student-run team, but it's led by our principal investigators. So just a little bit about our team structure. So led by our principal investigators, and then the next principal investigators lead our management team, and the management team leads our team leads. Have sub-teams for this massive project. So you can see here we have 7 sub-teams listed. So we have the systems teams, comms team, CDH team, it's command and data handling team, the electrical power system team, the mechanical team, the payload team, and the operations team. We're going to go into briefly a little bit later about what each of these teams do. So who are our principal investigators? So we have 3 principal investigators. We have Dr. Andre New. He is the senior scientist at Bruce Power. We have Dr. Yun, who's right here. He's a professor in the Department of Physics and Astronomy.
I changed my hairstyle.
And then we also have Dr. Eric Johnson. He is the Chief Innovation Officer at the Nuclear Innovation Institute. And then just a little bit about the history of NEUDOSE. So NEUDOSE started in 2015. It was conceptualized in 2015 by Dr. Andre while he was working at NASA. Next, in 2018, we joined the Canadian CubeSat project. So we were accepted into the Canadian CubeSat project after our proposal to the Canadian Space Agency. We then, throughout 2018 and 2022, developed our satellite. And in 2022, November, we were able to complete our flight model and integrate it into the deployer, the CubeSat deployer at the Canadian Space Agency in Montreal in December. And then now in 2023, we have our launch and our mission operations. So our launch is scheduled just next month. And our mission operation will spend 1 year collecting radiation data in space. So some of our NEUDOSE objectives that we have here. So the objectives for this whole mission, we have that human space is a rapidly growing field. It is growing, you can see things going just with the launch of the James Webb Telescope recently. There's a lot of countries that are investing in space research. And one of the segments of this research is space radiation. And space radiation is much different than the radiation on Earth, because when you're in space, you're not protected by the atmosphere that you benefit from on Earth. And there are significant health risks with, that are associated with long-term exposure for the astronaut that enter space. So radiation detection is an important part to understand the dose and the risks for these astronauts. So we have also broken up over underneath our overarching objective. We have science objectives and engineering objectives. So our science objective is to individually detect and measure the energy of charged and neutral particle ionizing radiation. It's 2 different types of radiation: charged particle radiation and neutral particle radiation. And then our engineering objectives, we have a few here. So designing and building an integrated system that allows for communication with the ground station, storage of scientific data, and the ability to downlink all of that information. We have the collection of telemetry data, power generation, we are our solar panels, our attitude determination system, as well as data visualization from the ground. And then what is a CubeSat? So a CubeSat is a nanosatellite, small satellite. As you can expect, sending things to space is very expensive. So why would you send up a big satellite when you can send up a small satellite that can do close to the same amount of things? So that's what a CubeSat is. And CubeSats are measured in standardized units. The metric that we use is 1U, which represents a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter cube. So the NEUDOSE satellite is just over 2 of these units. We have a few of these replicas in the front just to give you an idea as to how large the NEUDOSE satellite is. And inside of that NEUDOSE satellite, we have an antenna and a radio communication system to communicate with the ground. We also have the power source, so we have our solar panels and our electrical power system, as well as our onboard computer. And CubeSat can be used for a wide variety of different things. Technology demonstrations. In the case for NEUDOSE, we have science instruments as well as educational projects. And then lastly, they can also be used for commercial applications. So this is a quick look at our NEUDOSE CAD design. So our NEUDOSE CAD design is split into 2 segments. You can see on the left side is all of our circuit boards. We call this the bus stack. So it's combined of our electrical power system, our communications module, our antenna module, as well as our onboard computer. And then on the right-hand side is our scientific payload, which determines what type of radiation the satellite has. And over here, you can see a couple of the real images of the satellite we put together. So you can see clearly the top half of the satellite, that is our radiation detector. Then the bottom half are the bus stack. It's all the boards that are integrated. So this is the real assembly that actually ended up integrated at the Canadian Space Agency and is scheduled to be launched to space. In the right-hand photo, you can also see the solar panels installed on our CubeSat once we have integrated everything inside of that.
Okay, so my name is Graham. I'm the other payload lead, and I'll go through just some of the brief details about how this instrument and the rest of the satellite works before passing you off to the individual sub-team leads to tell you more about what they do. So we mentioned a lot about radiation detection at the beginning, and how we actually do it is by combining 2 detectors. So on the inside, this is where we measure the actual energy of radiation. So it goes through, excites the wire, and gives us a little pulse that we can measure how much energy is actually in the radiation. But that's only good for energy. It doesn't really tell us if it's charged or neutral, which is another big part of our goal. And so the way we do that is with the scintillator on the outside. And basically, when a charged particle goes through that, it will emit some light, it will detect it. And so if we measure energy at the same time that we measure light, it's charged. If we don't, and we only measure energy, then we know it's neutral. So below that, below the instrument, we have the bus stack, and that really comprises itself of 3 major components. At the top is the command and data handling, or CDH board. They're like the brains of the system. They control every other part of the satellite, as well as communicate with the ground with receiving commands. Below that, we have the EPS board. That's electrical power systems. They power us. So on the board is a battery, and as well as the solar panels on the outside. That's also part of the EPS team. And then the final thing at the bottom is the comms board. So while the CDH decides what to send, comms is responsible for actually sending that. So they'll do the actual RF communication with the ground station, which we have on top of each team. So this is sort of a general pass, what it will look like. We downlink data, and that's generally science data, as well as what we call housekeeping, which is like the health of the satellite. It's just how we make sure that it's still alive and doing well up in space. And then on the other side, we actually uplink operational commands, things like turning on the detector and starting to collect data. So another big thing with the satellite is attitude control. So we have an antenna on the bottom, but we actually need to point that antenna sort of close to the ground so we can transmit the data. We do that passively, and the attitude guys will tell you more about how that works, but essentially we point down to the ground so that the comms can do their job. And once we get the data, that's mission, operation, and control, the MOC. So they're responsible for actually storing and then visualizing the data for us so that we can see what we've collected, as well as scheduling and sending the commands. So someone will sit down in our MOC room and decide what we want the satellite to do. And when the satellite comes over, we'll send that data up, and it'll get commanded. So we'll go through just the general structure of how a mission gets organized. First is the idea. That was the conceptualization that we had back in 2015 by Dr. At which point we then go to the Canadian Space Agency to the CSA, they have their Canadian CubeSat project. If we propose it and it gets accepted, then we get to start designing. Now we put designing in the top right there, but really the design process happens all the way through most of the rest of these stages, sort of concurrently. So then next we'll have to go through a bunch of reviews. First is mission concept review. That's where we go in front of the CSA, give them the concept of our mission, and they help guide us along the right tracks to make sure that we are doing something that's achievable and that's going to be successful. Then we have 2 design reviews. First, preliminary design review is more of a theoretical design review where we tell them how we want to approach things. Again, they give us guidance, which brings us to critical design, and that's where they look into all the really important details of how we've done everything and make sure that we're up to all the standards set by both like the Canadian Space Agency or NASA or any other board. Then we move on to testing. So there's a test readiness review. That's where we can prove to them that we've tested it and it works the way we claimed it would. So a lot of reviews, as you can see. At which point we go to integration readiness review, the final review, where we prove to them that we can actually put this satellite into their deployer and that everything is going to work well. At that point, we go to integration, and that's where we'll put the satellite in the deployer and we'll hand it off to NanoRacks, and those are the guys responsible for shooting it out the back of the International Space Station. So that's where we are now. Coming up is launch. That's when it's going to go up on the ISS, or International Space Station resupply mission. And then eventually they'll shoot it out the back door and it'll get deployed. And that's when the mission really starts. So as you heard, we successfully completed integration at the Canadian Space Agency headquarters in November of last year. So we're just waiting for the SpaceX resupply mission to actually launch it up to the International Space Station. So this was us at the CSA, and you can see our satellite inside one of the deployers. And then on the right is just the patch that they've given us for the mission. So launch and deployment. So NEUDOSE is going to be launching on one of the Falcon 9s. It's the SpaceX resupply to the International Space Station. So it's going to go down in Florida, which is happening hopefully March 11th, unless they move it on us. And once it's up there, we'll see that it actually gets shot out back with the ISS on one of their deployers. So this was the 14th resupply mission. This was back in 2018. We weren't a part of that, but it'll be very similar. Once we're out, this is what we're going to do to actually get the satellite up and running. So first, we have a 30-minute timer. That's just to make sure we don't do anything like deploy antennas in the way of the International Space Station. That would not be good, and they get pretty mad at us for that. Once the 30-minute timer goes off, we boot up, so the power system will turn on, make sure everything's okay, at which point the CDH, the brain, comes on. And when they've tested themselves, finally we turn on comms, deploy the antennas, and then we start beaconing, which is sending messages down to the ground to let us know that the satellite is operational and that everything's going okay. At that point, if we decide everything's going okay, we'll move into the active mission, and that's where we'll actually start collecting science data. So I'll pass you off to Adam, who's going to do systems.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Adam. I'm one of our engineering managers here, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the systems team. So as Graham mentioned, our program is administered by the CSA. It's launched on a device made by a company called NanoRacks, managed by the CSA on a NASA mission that goes up on a SpaceX rocket. So along the way, every single one of those people has requirements for a safe and successful launch. Systems team job is to take our requirements for a successful mission, identify them, give them goals, integrate them with the requirements of our stakeholders. We review testing, integration timelines and routines. We work with all of our sub-teams to make sure that our mission progresses correctly, make sure we meet technical goals when we meet them. And we also identify mission risks and create contingency plans so that if something does go wrong, probably does, we know more or less what was going to happen and we have a plan to mitigate that. So here in the top left is a nice flow chart of the design process. Like I mentioned, we still have meetings with stakeholders, high-level requirements. As we move forward in the mission, we get into that sort of loopy area over there where there is back and forth between systems and all the technical sub-teams where we give them requirements, they give us information. We go back and forth a lot throughout the whole design process. At the bottom is our mission V. So moving from top to bottom of the V is basically top is more systems involvement, bottom is less systems involvement. Moving from left to right is from mission concept to operation. Top left, so we're still developing the mission, figuring out our goals, figuring out how everything's going to work. That is a really heavy systems time. And then in the top right, where we're more in the integration stage, that's also heavy systems involvement because we're trying to bring together all of our subsystems to make sure that everything we're going to talk to you guys about works together as one harmonious unit and a bunch of disjoint systems work slapped together. So I'm going to pass it off to comms.
Okay, so comms, like I said, they're the guys that handle the actual RF communication to the ground. So on the comms team, we've actually done something quite unique as opposed to other Canadian project satellites. We've made and designed our own communication port. So what you'll see here on the right is a custom designed communication port that we've done. Below that is the antenna module on the left. This we bought off the shelf, and it's what actually deploys the antennas for us. And then on top, we have our ground station. And that is the way that we actually communicate with the satellite. So the comms team, in essence, is responsible for all three of those things. They handle communicating to and from the ground, both on the satellite and on the top of the ATV. And they're really, yeah, that's about it for the comms. So I'll pass you on to the next. Oh, yeah, we have a video of the actual antenna deployment. So this is one of the tests we had to go through, which basically makes sure that the antennas don't actually deploy until 30 minutes after we booted up the satellite. This was done based on ITV in one of our labs. You can see my point.
That's the top one.
There you go. So you can see the antennas coming out on the side. So that's two long ones on both front and back there, and then we have slightly shorter ones. So next up is CDH, that's the brains. So what we've done is we've actually bought sort of an off-the-shelf component partially, and we put that on top of our own custom designed CDH board. So the CDH team is really responsible for both storing the data that we get from Payload and other teams, and keeping it safe until we actually pass over the ground station so that we can transmit it down to the ground, as well as commanding the satellite. So they're responsible for things like turning off the payload if we don't have enough power, just to make sure that the whole satellite doesn't go dead. And then they also execute just any other general commands that we receive. So we've got a couple photos for you on the right. This black box here, that is the off-the-shelf component we bought. And that is put onto the purple part, which is our own custom design board. You can see the development process is, this is unpopulated, and we have one of our lab technicians actually.
Now I'll talk to you about the electrical power system, or EPS, as we call it. So my name is Newt. I was in the team lead for the EPS for the last portion of the NEUDOSE mission. And as Graham mentioned, our main responsibility is to control the flow of power to the satellite. So as you can imagine, when the satellite's in space, its only source of power is the sun. So a significant amount of our design effort was spent designing, assembling, and testing these solar panels that you see here. The power that they generate is stored in the batteries, which are housed on a virtual, it's called power distribution module. This module is what regulates how much power flows to each subteam as it receives requests to do so. The reason we went for a commercial model for the EPS board specifically is basically because of its criticality. As you can imagine, if EPS doesn't turn on, nothing turns on. So essentially, if EPS doesn't work, then we essentially send a very expensive brick into space. So on the other hand, one thing you might not realize is we also don't want the satellite to power on too early, as Graham alluded to. If the satellite powers on while it's still in the deployer on the space station, the antennas will begin to deploy while it's still confined in the deployer, which will cause it to break. As well, given the high voltages that Payload requires or generates on their board, it places the personnel on the ISS at a potential risk of harm. So we had to do a significant amount of design to make a circuit that would have enough fail states and redundancies to make the CSA sure that there would be no harm placed to their personnel.
Hi folks, my name is Angela. I am one of the co-leads in mechanical along with Patrick. So mechanical essentially is responsible for two things. Holding the NEUDOSE together, connect to the rocket, and a very good one, which is don't blow up. So when it comes to our structures, you can see in the video there, it encapsulates everything that's inside. So it's really important as we're assembling that we have an order to doing this, and that all of our connections are strong and are able to hold things such as our solar panels, our antenna, etc. When it comes to connecting to the rocket, it's really important that we pay attention to the tolerances that we make our parts at. The manufacturer is going to do it so that we're able to slide into the deployer perfectly fine. So we pay heavily attention to that during the design process. Cool thing to note is, yes, we did have a manufacturer make our rails, but we do have parts in the satellite that were made here at McMaster that are going to be out in space. In terms of not blowing up, this is when our students get the chance to do a lot of simulations, such as finite element analysis, to make sure that everything is held during launch. So kind of that bottom picture there is us at our vibe test. That's kind of when the satellite gets shaken at random vibrations to see if it's going to survive at set magnitudes. Yeah, that's the fun.
Everyone, my name is Jonathan. I'm the team lead for the thermal team. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what we do. So the main role of the thermal team is to ensure that we don't cook the satellite when it's in orbit, right? So the orbit that we're in is called low Earth orbit, which is the same orbit that the International Space Station's in, and it orbits for about 90 minutes, 60% of which is directly in front of the sun, and then the rest 40 is the shadow. So you can see there's really huge temperature gradients that we have to try and manage and ensure that all the subsystems are working at the operating temperatures and not exceed them. So we run a range of different simulations. So we run orbital simulations. We also run, for example, re-entry simulations. So as the satellite deorbits from orbit and re-enters the Earth's atmosphere, we model how it burns up to ensure that we don't skewer someone on the ground. So one of the things we're responsible for is for the thermal solution, which is to cool the satellite. And here you can see a picture of the communications module that Graham talked about earlier. This is notoriously hot. It gets really high temperatures close to its operation limit, and we want to avoid that. You can see just on the right here, this is a thermal image of the comms board, and that little brick there is the power amplifier. And we were trying to identify why it's getting so hot. So we modeled the current densities on the board to find any pinch points and any sources of heat generation. And then we modeled how the heat distributes within the bus stack itself and how does it affect the other subsystems. And so to mitigate this, we designed a passive solution that doesn't require any power, a thermostrap, which is just a piece of metal that conducts the heat to the exterior of the satellite so it can radiate that energy off. And then we modeled it again just to make sure that our solution works. So this is just an example of what the thermal team does. We also thermally test the satellite either in the thermal vacuum chamber or in a thermal chamber. So if you have any questions, I'd love to talk more about this. It's a really fun team to be part of.
Hi everyone, my name is Aiden and I'm the lead of the active control system, or as we call it, local. So at its highest level, our function is basically to ensure that NEUDOSE doesn't spin out of control. So going a bit more into detail, we're kind of three main functions, so active control, attitude determination, and perform a lot of studies and simulations. So going to attitude control, we employ a passive magnetic attitude control system. Passive meaning that once we send the satellite up into space, we have no physical control over it. So hopefully everything we do checks out. But the system is made up of two magnets. We have a bar magnet and hysteresis rods that basically line the vertical axis of the satellite with the local magnetic field of the Earth. So as Graham alluded earlier, that basically just optimizes our communication. So you can see on the picture on the right here, this is a little image of one of the hysteresis rods on the top of the satellite. So it's very interesting to see the type of scale, like we have a magnet millimeters in length and diameter, and can have a huge impact on the environment of the satellite. So going into attitude determination, that is basically the estimating the actual orbit and rotation of the satellite. So we can gather a number of data types from the satellite and downlink it back to us on the ground. And from there, we can process it and see, how effective our system is and see direction. And then the last thing is studies and simulations. So naturally, we want to be sure before we set it up as a passive system that everything looks good. So we can see on the right here, this is our mission system software that we call SDK. So we can perform a number of simulations, get different vectors, whether we want to calculate power generation or simulate our communication with those. And then here on the right, we have a simulation of our actual attitude control system. So we can see on the right here, this black color, that the pointing error actually stabilizes after about 8 days, and as well as the angular rotations of the satellite. So, once we send it up, we're fairly confident that within 8 days that it's going to stabilize. Check it out.
Quick introduction. My name is also Connor. I'm also on the payload team, and I'm the payload mechanical specialist on the sub-team. Now, the payload team is responsible for developing the scientific instrument that collects the data for our mission. In the case of NEUDOSE, it's measuring radiation akin to how human tissue absorbs it, and this is ultimately to help make space exploration long-term safer. So there are a lot of different sub-teams on Payload to help make this possible. You have the instrument sub-team, which focuses on the instrument itself and its performance, the electrical sub-team, which focuses on the electrical functionality of the payload, the firmware sub-team, which focuses on the firmware controls, and the mechanical sub-team, which focuses on the structure of the payload. Now, all of these sub-teams, a lot of their design decisions and discussions are very closely integrated with one another, because a lot of the design decisions that any one team can make has implications for the other sub-teams, which makes for some really interesting and creative problem solving and collaboration between all of the different sub-teams. So it's really cool to get to work with people that are experts outside of your field, in my opinion. So the payload team is responsible for everything from the assembly, the integration, and the testing of our unit. And one of the most important tests that the payload and the entire satellite, for that matter, goes through is our high altitude balloon missions. This is a mission that we run every single year with NASA, where we send our payload amongst other university CubeSat teams. We send them up to the stratosphere, to the edge of space on a high altitude balloon to give ourselves like our first dry run, our first test of our payload in the field. And this is really exciting stuff. Images here, they can show that's our payload down here, as well as up there on the edge of space in the stratosphere on a balloon. Really important testing for the payload and the satellite that we do every year with NASA.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Taryn and I'm the operations team lead of the satellite. So this is moving away from the technical side a little bit. We cover the internal and external operations. So we have a pretty big team of students, and that means that we have to do a lot of communication within the team to make sure that things are running smoothly. So that includes things like onboarding, offboarding, HR, kind of maintaining the day-to-day operations of the team itself. The other main thing that operations does is external operations. So that's things like organizing events like this, doing social media, doing media releases, everything along those lines falls under operations. So up there we have our Instagram link and also a picture of a few members of the team meeting astronaut Jeremy Hansen over the summer. So we get to help organize events like that and make sure that students are getting opportunities. So now that we have talked to you about all of the things that we've done on the team and our mission, we also want to talk about upcoming opportunities to get involved with the team. So the Canadian Space Agency has put out a call for another round of CubeSat missions, and we have put in an application. So our next project is underway. If you keep checking our website and our social media over the next few months, we are going to have lots of positions and openings to get involved. So if you heard anything tonight that really sparks your interest, check it out and see if there's a role opening up so that you can also get involved. We're looking for a lot of technical roles as well as project managers and things like operations that might not fall under the highly technical side. The other thing is that we're currently hiring for some payload positions. So right now there are active positions on the website. You can go give those a look if you're interested.
So as we've all described up here, there are a lot of skills you can get from being a part of our team. There are very clearly some technical skills. I mean, there is a satellite being sent to space that was built by students at McMaster, and you could be involved with the next one. You also get a lot of outreach skills. There's a lot of alumni that has gone on to work in the space sector and get involved with a range of different opportunities. And being involved with NEUDOSE has definitely helped them. So this is a very valuable experience if it's something that aligns with your interests. Now that we've wrapped that up, we will be happy to take any questions that are general, and then we'll be sticking around for a while, spreading out if you'd like to come talk to anyone specifically. Thank you. Hello. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Really enjoyed it. Just had a question for the team members of NEUDOSE, and that is, what is everybody's favorite part of having worked on this mission, whether it be technical, non-technical, team-wise, anything?
You want to start over here and just go?
Yeah. All right. So I joined after my second year in 2018, and I wish I had joined earlier because the wealth of knowledge on this team is so expansive. You know, you get to just absorb everybody's wisdom and accumulated intelligence and just the way you think and make decisions, and you know, just design a satellite is, you know, like people are so smart on this team. And I started off like, you know, like thinking I was not good enough, whatever, right? Because I was young. But you really grow really fast, and I think that's super valuable, at least from my experience.
Hello again. So I think for me, when I was in first year, Jonathan actually approached me and told me about NEUDOSE, and I really wish I joined then, but I was kind of busy dying from first year, so I just wanted to get a bit more experience before joining. I would definitely say, as someone that has always wanted to work in the space sector, obviously that's really cool. Like the idea of being able to use my mechanical skills to send something into space is fantastic. But when you ask me what my favorite thing is, the people on NEUDOSE are very incredible. You learn so much from them, and you really look forward to all the meetings and work you do with them because you have so much to learn. But even outside of all the technical stuff, they're all just really awesome to get to know. So I would say that's my favorite part.
So for me, it would have to be the opportunities that you can get involved in. So if it's like HASP, which is going for high altitude balloon, meeting astronauts, or going to the Canadian Space Agency, even above all the technical things we do, we have a bunch of opportunities to do new things that I never would have been able to do if I hadn't joined the team. So I think for me, it has to be the opportunities.
For me, probably just going to reiterate some of the points I've already stated, but just the amount of knowledge that you pick up just from bouncing off of others. Specifically for the payload, I had the opportunity of meeting not only the electrical side, which I'm studying electrical engineering, but also the mechanical engineering side. I really had no experience in that, and being thrown into that situation, and I was immersed with all these people who knew so much, and it was great, and I really picked up a lot more than I would have in any other experience. So yeah, I think just the learning from others is incredible.
I can say the non-technical skills that you learn. Of course, everyone's mentioned technical skills, and there's a ton of that stuff, but learning to work with a group of people and learning how to have a disagreement about design and work through it productively is really super important, as well as the project management side of things. Like at the end of the day, engineering projects have a timeline and they need to be completed, and you need to learn how to actually get to that point. Right. So that's how that's it.
I would say everything everyone's just said is also one of my favorite parts, but I think one of the biggest things is actually getting the deliverable out of this. Like having a real satellite that was built by the students that is going to space, like having that as the outcome from something that so many people have put hard work into is one of the greatest things. Like just getting to see the satellite, even just looking at pictures and knowing how much work went into that, like how many late nights on campus, how many years people were working on this mission. I think that's one of the greatest things. Like it's hard to even describe how awesome it is when you really get to look at it.
I would definitely say working on the payload team specifically, you work with a lot of people that are experts in different fields. fields. And it makes for a really, really interesting collaboration. You learn a lot and you get to talk about stuff that's outside of your maybe comfort zone a little bit. And it's really exciting and intriguing, and it helps you to learn and grow. I mean, honestly, you're just not going to get this experience anywhere else. You make a friggin' saddle and send it to space. Let's not be proud about that.
So yes to everything, but more specific to attitude control, you know, it's something that you don't learn at all, really, in like traditional undergrad for engineering. And you know, within Ontario, Canada, there's only a number of like programs at universities that offer space eng. So having this experience working on attitude control for a satellite is a huge selling point, especially if you're looking, you know, for the space sector in the industry. Like I've experienced, like I've gotten a lot of opportunities for this. So being on the team, you get really, you know, invaluable experiences. Like you're not going to really learn this through undergrad. You know, as funny as that may sound, you're just going to get really different experiences that can't be.
I think for me, yeah, just to like echo what everyone else said, I think the biggest surprise to me at least is the fact that like every day I was working on it, that I was allowed to work on it. First of all, like my first time learning how to solder was when I started the solar panels. So like the fact that I was given that opportunity and supported throughout the whole process, and I learned the skills required. I think I don't know any other clubs that give you that level of opportunity and give you courage to be over with it.
Any other general questions? Heather? Okay. We'll be spread out, so if there's any specific sub-team that you'd like to talk to, just come on up. You can also look at like a range of models up here. If you have midterms to study for, you can also go study for those.
This is a good time to talk to all of us about like our personal experience on the team, because we didn't really get into that, and it's something I know that we'd all love to share. So come have a chat.